Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast is Listening Without Subtitles, What Your Brain Learns.
It's great to be here. This is, one of those topics that on the surface seems so simple, just a little trick, right? Turn off the subtitle.
Right, a life hack.
But when you actually dig into the science, you realize you're not talking about a hack at all. You're talking about neurobiology, cognitive load, and this fundamental way our brains try to predict the future.
It definitely feels like more than a simple trick. I have to admit, prepping for this felt a little bit like a personal attack on my, my Friday night movie routine.
So,
I can imagine.
We all know the feeling. I've got this amazing foreign film ready to go. Everyone's talking about it. And my hand is hovering over the mouse, over that play button.
And your finger is right there on the subtitle toggle.
It is. It's just itching to make sure those subtitles are on. It feels safer. It feels like the responsible way to watch the movie so I don't miss anything. That's the universal dilemma for every language learner, isn't it? We want the authentic experience, we want to hear the language, but we're terrified of being lost.
Totally. We're scared of missing the plot. And my brain has this whole script ready to justify it. I tell myself, okay, if I read along, I'm connecting the sound to the word. I'm doing two things at once.
I'm being efficient with my learning.
Exactly. It feels productive. But I think what we're going to talk about today suggests that safety net might actually be more of a cage.
That's the perfect way to put it. And that's our mission for this deep dive, to really explore what we're calling pure audio immersion.
Okay.
What happens, truly, when you take away that text crutch? Because the research is clear. Turning off subtitles isn't just about making it harder. It actually triggers a massive neurological event.
A neurological event? That sounds dramatic.
It is, though. It's about fundamentally rewiring neural pathways. It's about waking up these learning mechanisms in your brain that have been pretty much dormant since you were a toddler.
Wow. Okay, let's unpack that. Before we get into the brain rewiring part, let's just talk about the habit. Why are we so addicted to them? Why does it feel so good to have subtitles on?
It all comes down to this really powerful psychological feedback loop. When you watch a movie with subtitles on, you get the story. You get the jokes, you follow the plot twists.
Right. I feel successful. I walk away thinking, I totally understood that French movie.
And your brain gets this little reward signal that says, hey, I get this, I'm learning. But that's the comfortable illusion.
The illusion.
You're not validating your listening comprehension. You're validating your reading comprehension. You have to remember, the brain is, at its core, an efficiency-seeking machine. It is absolutely ruthless about saving energy.
Okay, so it's lazy.
It's smart lazy. So cognitive load theory tells us that if you give the brain two streams of information, one is this fast, fleeting, kind of ambiguous foreign audio.
And the other is clear, high-contrast static text on a screen.
It's going to take the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
Every single time.
So even when I make that promise to myself, okay, I'm really going to listen and I'll just glance down if I get lost, my brain is basically just lying to me.
It's not even a choice at that point. The foreign audio just becomes, well, background music. It adds atmosphere, sure. It makes the scene feel authentic.
But it's not where I'm getting the meaning.
Not at all. Your brain is getting all the data from the text because it's just so much easier to process.
Is there, hard proof of this? Or is this just a theory about how our brains work?
Oh, there's rock-solid evidence. Researchers have used eye tracking technology. They put people in a lab and watch where their eyes go.
And what did they find?
They found that even when people were instructed not to read, their eyes would compulsively, automatically track the text at the bottom of the screen. It's almost a reflex.
So you can't help it.
You really can't. You're not training your ears to listen better. You're training your eyes to read faster. And that's true even if the subtitles are in the target language, which is what a lot of people think is the advanced move.
Right, that's the next level up.
Oh, yeah.
But you're saying it's still a crutch.
It's still creating a dependency on a visual anchor. You're not truly immersed in the sound.
That's a great way to put it. It's like trying to learn how to walk while you're still holding onto the coffee table for dear life.
Exactly. You feel like you're moving, but you're not actually learning to balance on your own.
And to learn to balance, you have to let go.
You have to let go. And that brings us to the first huge change that happens when you do. We call it the phonological revolution.
Phonological. Okay, so we're diving into the actual mechanics of sound here.
We are. We're talking about the absolute building blocks. Phonemes.
Right, phones.
They're the smallest units of sound that can change the meaning of a word. So in English, think B and P, bat and pat are different words because of that one little sound difference.
And we have, what, 40-something of those in English?
About 44. But a language like Spanish only has around 24. And then you get something like the Ta language in Southern Africa, which has over 100.
Yeah.
With all these different clicks and tones.
Which I'm guessing if I didn't grow up speaking it, I literally cannot hear the difference between some of those sounds.
That is the absolute crux of it. It's what we call the childhood window. When you're an infant, your brain is capable of hearing every single sound distinction in every human language. You're a universal listener.
But that doesn't last.
No, your brain starts optimizing very quickly. It basically prunes away the ability to notice sounds that don't matter in your native language. It's a process of specialization.
And that's why, for instance, a native Japanese speaker might really struggle with the English R and L sounds.
Correct. It's not just a pronunciation issue. To their brain, which has been optimized for Japanese, those two sounds are categorized as the same phone. The distinction is irrelevant.
It's just filtered out.
It's filtered out.
Yeah.
Same reason a French speaker might struggle with the sounds. Their brain essentially tags that acoustic data as noise because it doesn't map onto their native sound system.
So when I finally turn off the subtitles and I'm listening to, say, a fast Spanish speaker, it just sounds like one long, blurry word.
It does. And you've just hit on a critical concept for adult learners. It's called speech segmentation.
Speech segmentation. Okay, break that down for me.
Well, think about how you're reading this right now. If this were a transcript, you'd see little white spaces between the words.
Sure. It's obvious where one word ends and the next begins.
But in spoken language, there are no white spaces. It's just a continuous stream of sound waves, a blur. When you take the subtitles away, your brain is forced, for the first time, to figure out where those cuts are based only on audio cues.
That sounds incredibly hard. If I don't know the vocabulary, how do I even begin to know where the word breaks are?
It is difficult. But that's where the magic really starts to happen. Neuroplasticity kicks in.
The brain's ability to change.
Exactly. fMRI studies show that when adults are put in this situation, listening to raw, unfiltered foreign audio, you see this massive increase in activation in a specific part of the brain called the superior temporal gyrus.
And what does that part do?
That's your primary auditory processing hub. It's the part that makes sense of sound.
So it's just working harder? Or is something else going on?
It leads to actual structural change. This is the amazing part. Extended immersion, this kind of listening, can physically increase the volume of gray matter in those auditory regions.
You're kidding. My brain is literally growing new tissue.
It's growing new hardware to handle the complexity. And it does this through a process called statistical learning.
Is statistical learning. Okay, so my brain is becoming a data analyst.
In a way, yes. It's running probabilities in the background. Without you even realizing it, it starts tracking patterns. It notices, hey, this sound is almost always followed by that sound, or these three syllables seem to hang out together a lot.
It's finding the word boundaries by finding the patterns in the chaos.
That's a perfect description. So even if you feel completely lost and confused on the surface, your brain is secretly in the background, crunching the data, building a phonological map of this new language.
That is just wild. But it's not just about sounds, right? You said something about predicting the future.
Right. This goes way beyond just hearing sounds correctly. It fundamentally changes how you process language in real time, because fluency, at its core, is prediction.
How do you mean?
When you and I are talking now, in our native language, we're constantly unconsciously predicting what the other person is going to say next.
Right, like finishing each other's sentences. I do that all the time.
And that's what we call predictive processing. Your brain is anticipating vocabulary, grammar, even the speaker's intent, milliseconds before the sound even hits your ears. But subtitles completely break this mechanism.
How? I'm still reading and trying to guess what comes next in the plot.
But it's a timeline problem. Subtitles present a whole chunk of text at once. You can skim the entire sentence in an instant. That's parallel comprehension.
Okay.
Real speech is sequential. It unfolds one word at a time. You can't skip ahead in a real conversation. You have to process it as it comes.
So subtitles kind of ruin the linguistic suspense. I see the word knife before the character even says it.
They destroy the prediction. When you listen without that text, your brain is forced to guess the next word based only on the one that came before it. And especially when you're learning, your guess is probably going to be wrong.
Which feels awful. It just feels like I'm failing over and over.
But that feeling is the most important part of the process. Neuroscientists call it the prediction error signal.
Oh, what?
Prediction error signal. When your brain guesses a word and the audio proves it wrong, a little alarm goes off. It says, whoops, that model is wrong. Update the system.
So that feeling of frustration that, oh, I thought he said table, but he actually said able, that's literally the sound of my brain learning.
That is precisely the sensation of learning. There was a fascinating study in Nature Neuroscience using these incredibly sensitive MEG scanners. They found that the learners who generated larger error signals, the ones who were struggling and guessing wrong more often, were the ones who improved the fastest.
I love that. I need to get that tattooed on my arm. The frustration is the sensation of learning.
It's completely true. And it's a serious workout for your brain. Which brings us to this idea of the brain gym.
The brain gym. I like this analogy. So if subtitles are me sitting on the couch eating chips,
then listening without subtitles is you in the corner doing heavy resistance training.
Yeah.
Specifically for your prefrontal cortex.
The CEO of the brain.
CEO of the brain. The part that's responsible for what we call executive control.
Okay, executive control sounds very official. What does that actually include?
It includes things like sustained attention, working memory, and cognitive inhibition, the ability to ignore distractions.
Right.
Now think about what you're asking your brain to do when you listen without a net. You have to sustain your attention even when you're confused. You have to hold an unfamiliar sound in your working memory while you wait for more context. And you have to suppress that constant, screaming urge to just give up and check your phone.
That sounds exhausting. And it explains why after like 20 minutes of really listening, I feel mentally drained.
It is exhausting. But just like in the gym, that exhaustion is a sign that you're building something. In this case, you're building cognitive reserve.
Cognitive reserve.
And this is where the implications get really huge. Way beyond just learning a language. There's a powerful link between bilingualism and the effortful use of a second language, and a significant delay in the onset of dementia symptoms.
You're serious just from doing this?
Yes. The data is pretty clear. On average, the clinical symptoms of Alzheimer's are delayed by 4 to 5 years in people who are actively, effortfully bilingual.
Wow.
You're not just learning vocabulary. You're building a more robust, flexible, and resilient brain. The neural networks become denser so they can better withstand the damage caused by aging or disease.
That's a pretty incredible return on investment for watching a movie. But let's bring it back to that movie night. I'm convinced on the brain benefits, but I'm still worried I'm just going to be totally lost. How do I actually follow the plot if I'm missing so many words?
You have to switch modes. You stop being a listener and you start being a detective.
A detective?
You shift from relying on words to relying on what we call contextual intelligence, or more technically, pragmatics.
So I'm looking at everything but the words.
Everything but the words. You're analyzing tone of voice, facial expressions, body language, the setting, the situation. Let's use a really dramatic example.
Okay, I'm ready.
Imagine a scene. Character A says a line of dialogue in a language you don't know, and character B immediately slaps them across the face.
Okay, very dramatic.
Now, you might have understood 0% of the words spoken. But did you understand what happened?
Of course, character A said something offensive or shocking.
Exactly. You understood the meaning of the interaction perfectly, and your brain, in that moment, creates a connection. It maps the string of sounds you heard to the contextual meaning of offensive statement.
That's actually how babies learn, isn't it? They don't have a dictionary.
It is. A toddler learns the word ball, not from a definition, but because they hear that sound repeated over and over while they are seeing, touching, and playing with a round object.
So we're tapping back into that system.
We are. But here's the really good news. As adults, we have a massive advantage over babies.
We do. Because sometimes when I'm trying to listen, I feel like a giant confused baby.
We have what's called world knowledge. We have decades of experience. We know how a conversation in a restaurant works. We know what an argument looks like. We know the beats of a romantic confession.
So I can use my life experience to make educated guesses.
Your life experience constrains the possibilities. A baby has no idea that after a waiter hands you a menu, they're probably going to ask what you want to drink.
Yeah.
You do. That knowledge is a powerful tool.
And when I learn a word that way from the context, does it stick better?
It leads to much deeper learning. A word learned from context, tied to an emotion and a visual, like the slap word, is stored in a rich network of associations in your brain. It's not just a simple one-to-one translation pair you memorize from a flashcard. It has a real sensory address in your memory.
But dealing with all that uncertainty, all those gaps, that's a psychological challenge, isn't it? I know I hate not knowing things.
You've hit on maybe the single biggest barrier for most learners. It's not intelligence, it's your tolerance for ambiguity.
The brain really hates uncertainty.
It despises it. Subtitles are pure certainty. They resolve all doubt instantly. No subtitles is pure ambiguity.
So I have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
You have to shift your entire mindset. You have to move away from a binary way of thinking, I get it or I don't get it, and move towards a gradient.
A gradient. You mean like getting partial credit?
Yes. Maybe you didn't understand a single noun in that sentence, but you understood the angry tone. That's a win. Maybe you got the general topic of the conversation, but none of the details. That's also a win.
So celebrating the small victories.
It's about having grit. The learners who succeed are the ones with high ambiguity tolerance. They keep listening even when their confidence plummets. They don't panic and reach for the remote the second they miss a word.
And honestly, that feels like a skill that goes way beyond language learning. Being okay with not having the answer right away is useful everywhere.
It is absolutely a transferable life skill for problem solving in any domain. But there's another whole layer of meaning we miss entirely when we just read. And that's the music of the language, the prosody.
Prosody. So the rhythm, the intonation, the stress.
Exactly. And it can completely change the meaning of a sentence. Let's try a quick experiment. Take this simple sentence. I didn't say he stole the money.
Okay. I didn't say he stole the money. Pretty straightforward.
Now, I want you to say it again, but this time, put all the stress on the word I.
Okay. I didn't say he stole the money. Someone else said it.
Right. Now, what if you stress the word say?
I didn't say he stole the money. Maybe I just implied it. Or I wrote it down in a note.
Good. Now stress he.
I didn't say he stole the money, meaning someone else stole it, not him.
And one more. Stress money.
I didn't say he stole the money. So maybe he stole the jewelry instead.
You see that. One sentence on paper. But depending on the prosody, it has at least 7 completely different meanings.
That is incredible. And when I'm reading the subtitles,
the text is identical for all 7 of those versions. It's completely flat. There's no information about the stress. You have to hear it to understand the nuance, the sarcasm, the denial, the implication.
This must be even more important in other languages.
Massively important. A tonal language like Mandarin uses pitch to change the entire meaning of a word. English is what we call a stress-timed language. Spanish is syllable-timed. And here's another cool little neurofact. The parts of your brain that process linguistic prosody overlap significantly with the parts that process music.
So by practicing my listening, I could be getting better at music appreciation at the same time.
In a way, yes. You're training your ear to be more sensitive to pitch, rhythm, and timbre.
I want to circle back for a second to this idea of it being hard. We've established that the frustration is good, but is there a formal name for this concept?
There is. A psychologist named Robert York calls it desirable difficulty.
Desirable difficulty. That sounds like a total contradiction.
It does, but his research is fascinating. The core idea is that when learning is too easy, it leads to very shallow processing and creates weak, fragile memories.
Because my brain didn't have to work for it.
It didn't have to struggle. But effortful learning, where you really have to struggle to retrieve a meaning that forces what's called elaborative encoding.
Elaborative encoding. That sounds much stronger.
It is. It means you're not just storing a piece of data. You're connecting it to a whole web of other memories and contexts. This also ties into something called the generation effect.
Okay.
Which basically says that you remember information much better if you generate the answer yourself, rather than just being given it.
So when I figure out a word from the context, I own it in a way that I don't if the subtitle just hands it to me.
You earned it. And your brain actually rewards you for earning it. When you finally crack the code on a tricky sentence, your brain releases a little bit of dopamine.
The pleasure chemical.
Right. And that dopamine hit helps to stamp that memory more securely into your long-term storage.
So I'm basically getting a little dopamine reward for my detective work.
Whatever it takes to keep you going.
Okay, now what about the other visual aspect? Not reading, but actually watching the actors.
This is huge. Real-life communication is multimodal. It's sound plus vision. We don't just hear with our ears, we also hear with our eyes. Are you familiar with the McGurk effect?
Vaguely. Isn't that the weird illusion where what you see changes what you hear?
That's the one. In the classic experiment, you see a video of a person's mouth making the shape for the sound ka.
Okay, ga.
But the audio that's played is the sound ba. And what most people perceive, what their brain tells them they heard, is da, a third sound that's a blend of the two.
Wait, really? So my eyes can actually override what my ears are hearing?
Or, more accurately, your brain integrates the information from both senses to make its best guess about what's real. It proves that we use visual cues from a speaker's mouth to help us process sound.
And if I'm reading subtitles?
Your eyes are glued to the bottom third of the screen. You're completely missing all of that rich data from their lip movements, their facial expressions, their gestures.
I'm missing half the conversation.
You are. When you turn off the text, your eyes naturally drift up to their faces. You start unconsciously learning how sounds are physically produced. You see the difference between an S and a theat. It's another layer of input.
And that must also connect to the cultural side of things, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because language is so much more than a code for transmitting information. It's a framework for thinking. It literally shapes how we perceive the world. Things like color or time or social relationships.
Can you give me an example of that?
Sure, think about a language like Korean or Japanese. Social hierarchy is baked right into the grammar. The verb you use changes completely depending on whether you're speaking to your boss, your friend, or your younger sibling.
Right, the politeness levels.
When you read an English subtitle, all of that is flattened. It's filtered through the lens of your own culture, which is probably much less hierarchical. You lose that entire dimension of the interaction.
You're not just translating the words, you're translating the culture, and a lot gets lost.
You sanitize it. But when you listen raw, you force your brain to operate inside that foreign framework. It's why bilinguals often show different personality traits or make different decisions depending on which language they're using. You start to build that cognitive flexibility.
Okay. I am 100% sold on the why. I get it. My brain needs this workout. But I am still terrified of the how. If I go cold turkey tonight, understand nothing, and get frustrated, I'm just going to quit. How do we build up to this?
That's the key question. You need scaffolding. You don't walk into a gym for the first time and try to bench press 300 pounds.
Definitely not. So what's the equivalent of starting with the 5-pound dumbbells?
Strategy number 1, use highly contextualized content. Don't start with an audio-only podcast where it's just voices in the dark. Start with movies and TV shows. The visuals provide all that context we were talking about.
Okay, so the visuals are my friend. They help me fill in the gaps.
Strategy number 2, use familiar content. This is a big one. Watch a movie that you already know and love.
Oh, that's a great idea. Like watch Star Wars dubbed in German.
Exactly. You already know the entire plot. You know what's going to happen. So your brain is freed from the burden of following the story. It can dedicate 100% of its resources to just listening and mapping the sounds to the events you know are happening.
That dramatically lowers the anxiety. What's next?
Strategy 3 is the 20-30% rule. This is a mental shift. You have to accept and even celebrate partial comprehension. If you only understand 20% of what's being said, that is a massive victory. It is not a failure.
That's so hard, though. We're trained from school to aim for 100%.
But this isn't school. This is messy, real-world learning. And finally, you have to understand the difference between active and passive listening. Both have their place.
Okay.
Passive listening, just having it on in the background, is good for getting used to the rhythm and flow of the language. But active listening, where you're sitting forward, intensely focused, maybe even rewinding short segments, that's what builds the new neural pathways. That's the heavy lifting.
It's the difference between having the radio on in the car versus trying to learn the lyrics to a new song.
Perfectly put. And all of this leads to the ultimate goal, which is automaticity.
Making it effortless.
Right. Think about learning to ride a bike.
Okay.
Can you learn how to balance by reading a book about it?
No way. You have to get on the bike and wobble and probably fall a few times.
You need the wobble. The instability is a necessary part of the learning process. Subtitles are the training wheels. They keep you perfectly stable, but they also prevent you from ever learning how to balance on your own.
So I have to be willing to embrace the wobble.
You have to. The goal is to move from controlled processing, which is slow, painful, and requires all your attention, to automatic processing, which is fast, effortless, and unconscious.
And that only comes from putting in the miles on the bike.
Miles on the bike without the training wheels on.
Well, this has been a huge reality check for me. It really boils down to the fact that the subtitle button isn't just a setting. It's a choice between comfort and actual growth.
It's almost always uncomfortable. It can be incredibly frustrating. But it is the only way to build a brain that can truly and automatically process a new language, rather than one that just decodes text.
I think I'm ready to try it tonight. No subtitles, just me, a movie, and my poor, struggling prefrontal cortex.
Enjoy the brain workout.
That wraps up our deep dive. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks for listening.
Okay, so picture this. I want you to imagine this scenario. It's, say, a Tuesday morning. You finally settled into your favorite chair, maybe that ergonomic one you finally splurged on.
Oh, yeah, the good one?
The good one. You've got your noise-canceling headphones on, fresh cup of coffee, steaming just right. And you are, like, mentally ready to tackle that hour-long recording of a crucial meeting.
The perfect setup.
It is the perfect setup. Or maybe it's a really dense, technical deep dive you've been meaning to get to for weeks. You press play, you feel productive, you feel sophisticated, you are ready.
Sounds like the absolute ideal start to a productive session.
It is.
Yeah.
Until you kind of glance down at your watch and realize 15 minutes have just vanished. And then this cold horror sets in. You haven't heard a single word.
The phantom was, that is a universal experience, I think.
It is the absolute worst. Because you realize your eyes have been open, the audio's been playing, but your mind has been, I don't know, planning dinner or replaying an argument from 3 years ago, or literally just wondering why zebras have stripes.
Right.
So you sigh, you rewind, and you listen again, and then, and this is the part that drives me completely crazy, you zone out at the exact same spot again.
It is incredibly frustrating. But I really want to start by validating that feeling for everyone listening. This isn't some kind of personal failing. You aren't bad at listening.
It feels like it, though.
I know, but it's actually a very specific cognitive challenge, especially when we're talking about long-form audio. And if you're listening to that audio in English, and English isn't your first language, that difficulty level just skyrocketed.
Right. It's like you're playing the game on hard mode.
Yeah.
But that is exactly why we're here today. We're doing a deep dive into this comprehensive guide on how to stay focused during long English audio. And the mission today is, I think, pretty cool. We want to help you stop being a passive passenger who just lets all these words wash over them and turn you into an active driver of the experience.
Exactly. We're looking at a stack of research here that covers, well, everything. From the neuroscience of why we zone out to environmental hacks, some of which are really surprising, and very specific, actionable note-taking strategies.
So we're not just talking about trying harder.
No, not at all. We're talking about re-engineering the way you listen from the ground up.
And the stakes are actually pretty high here, right? I mean, we live in a world that's just drowning in content. If you can actually consume, understand, and retain long-form audio, that's a massive competitive advantage.
It really is. It's the difference between just hearing noise and actually acquiring knowledge. And in a knowledge economy, attention is currency. It really is.
So let's unpack this. Why is this so hard? I mean, I can binge watch a TV show for 3 hours without even blinking. Why can I listen to a 45-minute lecture without my brain actively trying to escape?
Yeah, that's the core question. And it comes down to something psychologists call cognitive load.
Cognitive load. Okay.
When you're watching a show, you have visual cues, you have action, you have facial expressions. Your visual cortex is doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
Right. It's feeding you information in multiple ways.
But when you're just listening, especially to complex audio, your brain is multitasking like crazy, even if it feels like you're just sitting there doing nothing.
Multitasking how? It feels so passive, like I'm just sitting and receiving.
Well, think about what's happening under the hood. First, you're decoding phonetic sounds. Then you're parsing grammar. Then you're extracting meaning from vocabulary.
Okay.
And you're doing all that while trying to connect that new information to what you already know so you can store it in your long-term memory. That is a lot of processing power.
So it's like running a high-end video game on a computer that just doesn't have enough RAM.
Precisely. The system just naturally starts to lag. And there's another key difference here that the source material really highlights, and that's between reading and listening.
Okay.
When you read, you control the pace. If a sentence is complex, you naturally slow down. You can reread it instantly. It's an active control.
Yeah, you're the driver.
Exactly. But audio is passive. It moves at the speaker's speed, not yours.
That is such a good point. It's like being on a treadmill that someone else controls. If they suddenly start sprinting, you have to sprint.
Right.
And if you stumble for a second to, I don't know, tie your shoe, the treadmill keeps going, you just fly off the back.
That is the perfect analogy, and that's where this concept of the translation tax comes in.
The translation tax. I like that term. So what does that mean for our listeners who might be using English as a second or third language?
It means the treadmill is set at a steeper incline from the start. Even if you're quite fluent, Your brain is still working harder to recognize patterns that aren't native to you.
So there's always a little bit of extra processing happening.
Always. You're constantly translating, or at the very least, processing linguistic structures that aren't automatic. That sustains a level of mental effort that just leads to burnout much, much faster than if you were listening in your native tongue.
So if you feel exhausted after 20 minutes of an English podcast, it's not because you're lazy. It's because you've just done a really heavy mental workout.
Correct. It is metabolic fatigue. I mean, your brain is literally burning glucose at a higher rate. And on top of all that, we have to contend with the attention span reality.
Oh, boy.
There's research referenced in our source material suggesting that in our digital age, the average human attention span for initial engagement with something new might be down to about 8 seconds.
8 seconds. That's shorter than a goldfish, isn't it? I feel like I've read that somewhere.
Well, it's a bit of a contested statistic in the scientific community, so we probably shouldn't take it too literally, but the sentiment holds true.
Right. The general idea.
We're wired for these quick hits of dopamine, social media scrolling, notifications, long audio demand sustained, passive concentration, which is the exact opposite of how we usually interact with our technology.
Plus, with no pictures, the brain just naturally looks for other things to focus on.
And that usually ends up being the crack in the ceiling, or, as you said, wondering if you left the stove on.
Okay, so we're fighting our own biology, we're fighting the medium itself, and for many, we're fighting a language barrier. That sounds kind of depressing.
It can, but let's talk about how to win.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it is absolutely winnable if you have the right strategy.
Okay, so phase 1 in the guide is what I'm calling pregame rituals. It talks about optimizing the cockpit. And I love this idea that you don't just hit play, you have to set the stage.
Exactly. Like a pilot doesn't just take off, they go through the pre-flight checklist.
Right.
Your environment dramatically impacts your ability to concentrate. And the first rule is one we all know, but we rarely do it effectively. Digital control.
You mean just putting the phone away? Is that enough?
It's more than that. The source material specifically recommends putting your phone on airplane mode, not just vibrate, not just silent, airplane mode.
Why so strict? Even if I don't check it.
Yes, even if you don't check it, because every notification, every buzz, every screen that lights up is a derailment. It creates what researchers call anticipatory anxiety or dual task interference.
So even if I ignore the buzz, part of my brain has already split off.
That part of your brain has split off to wonder, who is that? Is it urgent? What if it's important? Even if you don't look, you've broken that fragile stream of focus. And once it's broken, it takes significant mental energy to get it back.
That's so true. It takes me like a solid minute to get back into the groove after a distraction. Okay, so airplane mode is non-negotiable. What about how we sit? Does that matter?
It matters a lot. Lighting and posture. This might sound really basic, but avoiding lying down is crucial.
Oh, guilty.
Lying down signals to your brain that it's time to rest or sleep. It triggers the parasympathetic nervous system to relax. You want to be comfortable, but you also want to be alert. So, feet on the floor, sitting up.
No listening from bed. Got it. And lighting.
You need adequate light. Too dim, and it stimulates melatonin production, which makes you drowsy. Too bright, and it can cause eye strain. But here's the hack from the guide that I found really interesting. Temperature.
Yes, the temperature hack. This was super specific, wasn't it?
Very specific. The guide recommends keeping the room between 65 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit.
Which is
about 18 to 21 degrees Celsius.
Wow, that's crisp. That's a bit chilly for me. That is definitely put on a light sweater weather.
And that's exactly the point. Cooler temperatures keep you alert. Warm rooms induce sleepiness. I mean, think about how you feel in a warm lecture hall right after lunch.
Instantly sleepy.
So if you're struggling to stay awake during a dense financial report, maybe try dropping the thermostat a few degrees.
Okay, so we're sitting up, phone is off, room is chilly. Now, what about our brains? The source talks a lot about priming the brain.
Right. This is about building a scaffold before you try to build the house. If you just pour concrete on the ground, it goes everywhere. You need a form, a structure.
So what's the form for audio?
The recommendation is to take a 3-minute preview. Before you hit play, scan the description. Look at the chapter titles if they're available. If there are slides or a transcript, just look at the subheadings.
So you're creating a mental framework.
You're giving the new information a place to stick before you even hear it.
That makes total sense. It's like looking at the picture on the jigsaw puzzle box before you start digging for pieces. If you know you're looking for sky, it's way easier to find the blue pieces.
Precisely. You're preloading the vocabulary. If you see the term EBITDA in the show notes, when you hear it 2 minutes later, your brain recognizes it instead of stumbling over it as a totally new concept.
Okay, and alongside that, it says to set intentions.
Yes. You have to ask yourself one simple question. Why am I listening to this? This activates what's known as the reticular activating system, or RAS, in your brain.
The RAS, we've talked about this before. It's basically the brain's bouncer. It's filtering.
It is the bouncer of the brain, yeah. It filters out millions of bits of sensory data every second. So if you tell your RAS, I need to find out how to manage a budget, your brain will automatically perk up and filter for that information, and it'll ignore the background noise.
But if you just listen without a purpose,
your brain treats everything as equal noise, and the bouncer just lets everyone into the club. It's chaos.
and that chaos is you zoning out. Okay, and finally, for this pregame section, there's a suggestion for a 5-minute meditation.
Yes, and it doesn't have to be anything mystical, just a quick breathing exercise. It trains the focus muscle right before the marathon begins. It just calms the mind and clears out all that clutter, the grocery list, the emails, so you actually have space for the new info.
Okay, we are prepped, we are primed. Now we are in phase 2. Listen, this is where the rubber meets the road. The source material says the core philosophy here is transforming from passive to active.
You absolutely must participate in the audio. You cannot just be a spectator. And probably the most powerful tool for this is the Cornell note-taking method, but adapted for audio.
I remember using Cornell notes in college, but I always found it so hard to keep up. How do we do it for like a fast-talking podcast?
It's all about the layout strategy. So you divide your page into 3 sections. You have a narrow column on the left, a much wider column on the right, and then a section across the bottom.
Okay, I'm visualizing that. Skinny on the left, wide on the right, box at the bottom.
While you were listening, you only used the wide right column. But, and this is so critical, do not try to transcribe everything. That is a trap.
Oh, I am so guilty of that. I'm trying to write down every single word because I'm afraid I'll miss something important.
It's impossible, and it's actually counterproductive. You switch from listening for meaning to listening for dictation, and your brain can't do both well at the same time.
So what should I be writing?
Just the nuggets. Key points, interesting phrases, new vocabulary words, use abbreviations, be messy. It's not for anyone else.
Okay, so that's the big right column. What about the skinny one on the left?
The left column is for immediately after the listening session or maybe during one of your breaks. You look at your messy notes on the right, and in the left column, you write down questions or keywords that trigger the memory of what's in the right column.
Ah, so it forces you to process the information a second time.
Exactly. It's like you're creating your own personal study guide.
And the box at the bottom.
That's for synthesis. A short summary of the entire segment in your own words. And the rule is, if you can summarize it in that box, you understood it. If you can't, you didn't really get it.
I love that. It turns this ephemeral audio file into a physical resource you can actually use later. Now, the source also mentioned something for the visual thinkers out there. Visual mental maps. This one is my personal favorite.
This is a great technique, and it relies on something called dual coding. It's all about converting auditory information into visual information.
So if the speaker is describing a process,
you visualize the steps. If they're telling a story, you imagine it like a little movie playing in your head.
I do this all the time. If they're talking about an abstract concept, like say data flow in a company, I'll picture water pipes running through the walls of a house.
That is an excellent way to do it because you're using more of your brain. You're creating multiple memory pathways, both visual and auditory. It makes the memory so much stickier.
And I guess if you start drifting, the movie stops.
Exactly. It's a built-in alert that you're not listening anymore.
But what if you just drift? What if despite the movie, you catch yourself thinking about lunch? The guide has a summarization technique for this exact problem.
Yes, the pause and speak rule. Every 10 to 15 minutes, you physically hit pause. Then you verbally out loud summarize what you just heard.
Oh, so I'll be talking to myself in an empty room. My neighbors are going to love this.
Let them wonder. It works because of retrieval practice. If you can't articulate the main points out loud, it's a clear sign you didn't really hear it. You have to rewind.
You know, the fear of having to rewind is actually a pretty good motivator to pay attention in the first place.
It really is. Nobody wants to listen to the same thing twice because they weren't paying attention.
Yeah, and it also suggests maintaining an internal dialogue, the question-asking approach.
Yeah, don't just passively accept the information. You should be asking questions in your head as you listen. Why did they say that? What evidence supports this? How does this apply to me or my work?
It turns the listening session into a debate or a conversation in your own mind.
It keeps you on your toes.
Okay, let's move to phase 3, managing energy. Because even if you have the best notes in the world, your brain has a battery life. It's not infinite.
You can't expect to focus indefinitely. It's just not how we're built. The guide recommends adapting the Pomodoro technique for audio.
So the standard Pomodoro is 25 minutes of work, then a 5-minute break.
Right. And that works really well. But the guide suggests a modification for especially complex content or for second language listening.
What's modification?
Shorten the work period to 20 minutes and then lengthen the break to maybe 7 or 8 minutes.
Just acknowledging that the translation tax we talked about burns the battery faster.
Precisely. And we need to talk about what you do during that break. The guide is very, very strict about this. What you do during the break matters just as much as the listening itself.
Let me guess. No scrolling Instagram.
Absolutely not. Do not check your email. Do not check social media. That fragments your attention. You create what's called attention residue.
Attention residue.
Yeah. If you look at a stressful email, part of your brain stays stuck on that email even when you go back to the audio.
So you start the next 20-minute segment with only like 80% of your brain actually available for the task.
Correct. You need to give your brain a true rest, a real reset.
Okay, so what should we be doing in those 7 or 8 minutes?
Physical movement is key. Stand up, walk around, get oxygen flowing to the brain, hydrate, drink some water. Have a healthy snack like nuts or fruit, not sugar that's going to cause a crash later.
And there was a rule for your eyes too, right? Since we might be staring at notes or a screen.
The 20-20-20 rule. It's great. If you're taking notes on a screen, every 20 minutes, you look at something that's 20 feet away for 20 seconds.
What does that do?
It reduces eye strain. And believe it or not, eye strain is a huge contributor to that feeling of brain fog we get. So relaxing your eyes actually helps relax your mind.
I love that. It's so simple and easy to remember. Now, how do we know when we've just hit the wall? When is it time to stop for the day?
You need to learn to recognize the signs of genuine fatigue. If you start rereading your notes and they just don't make any sense, or you feel physically restless, or your mind is wandering every 30 seconds, don't push through.
So the no pain, no gain mentality doesn't work for focus.
It is completely counterproductive. You'll retain less and just burn yourself out for the next day. You aren't building muscle, you're just depleting neurotransmitters. Take an unscheduled break if you need it. There's no shame in that.
Okay, let's talk about the fun stuff. Phase 4, tech support and advanced tactics. We live in the future, we should be using the tools of the future.
And playback speed is an incredibly powerful lever. Most people know they can speed up or slow down audio, but the strategy behind when and why you do it is really interesting.
For learners, slowing it down to, say, 0.75x speed makes a lot of sense. It gives you that extra split second to process a difficult word.
Exactly. It buys you processing time, which is invaluable.
Yeah.
But for more advanced listeners, or if you're struggling to focus on content that feels a little bit slow, the guide paradoxically suggests speeding it up.
Wait, really? That feels so counterintuitive. Speeding it up to focus better.
It works because of the cognitive load we talked about earlier. If a speaker is talking really slowly, your brain has all this gap time between their words.
And in that gap,
Your brain thinks, I wonder what's for dinner. But if you bump the speed up to 1.1x or maybe 1.25x, you demand its total attention. There is literally no room for your mind to wander.
that is fascinating. It's like driving a car really fast. You have to look at the road. If you're driving slowly, you can look around at the scenery.
That's a perfect analogy. It creates a scarcity effect for your attention, and you can also use variable speed. You know, slow down for the dense technical parts and then speed up for the anecdotes or the intro.
What about transcripts? I sometimes feel like they're a safety net for me.
They are, but they can become a crutch if you're not careful. The guide suggests using a strategy called dual processing, which is basically reading along while you're listening. This is great for really difficult content because it's multisensory.
But the key is not to just read and ignore the audio, right?
Right. And you should also use it as a clarification tool. So instead of rewinding 10 times to catch one mumbled word, just glance at the transcript. It saves so much time and frustration.
Okay, let's talk gear. Do headphones really matter that much?
Noise cancellation is a game changer. It directly reduces the cognitive load of having to filter out background noise.
Ah, so it's a conservation of energy thing.
Exactly. If your brain doesn't have to work to ignore the coffee shop chatter or the dog barking next door, it has more energy to spend on processing the English audio.
And speaking of noise, the guide mentions some really niche hacks. involving, well, more noise.
Yes, white or brown noise.
Brown noise? I've heard of white noise. That's like static. What on earth is brown noise?
It's a lower frequency sound than white noise, so think of a deep rumble or heavy rain or a strong wind. For a lot of people, white noise is actually too high-pitched and kind of annoying.
I find it a little grating, yeah.
Brown noise can mask those distracting environmental sounds without competing with the frequencies of human speech. It's much less intrusive.
So it creates a sort of sonic blanket around you, isolating you with the audio.
That's a great way to put it. It just isolates you.
Interesting. And there was a mental hack in here called memory palaces. This sounded very Sherlock Holmes to me.
This is actually an ancient technique. It's called the method of loci. You mentally place facts in specific rooms of your house. So let's say the speaker talks about a marketing strategy with 3 pillars: price, product, and promotion.
Okay, price, product, promotion. I have to remember those.
So you imagine walking up to your house. On your front doormat, there is a giant glowing price tag. That's price.
Okay, got it. Price tag on the mat.
Then you walk into your hallway, and there's a giant wrapped box of the product blocking your way. And then you walk into your kitchen, and there's a huge billboard on your fridge for the promotion.
It sounds a little wild, but I can see how that would work. It uses our spatial memory, which is usually much stronger than our auditory memory.
Exactly. Later, when you want to recall those points, you just mentally walk through your house again. What was on the mat? Oh, right, the price tag. It's incredibly sticky.
And the final advanced tactic listed is meta-attention.
This is really the master skill. It's the skill of monitoring your own focus in real time. It's metacognition thinking about your thinking.
So it's just noticing when you drift.
And noticing it without judgment, just observing it. Oh, I drifted. Interesting. Okay, back to the audio.
It's like being the friendly security guard of your own mind. Hey, you thought about dinner? Get out of here. Back to work.
Laughs. Essentially, yes. But a kind, gentle security guard, you don't want to...
Building stamina and troubleshooting. Because you don't just go out and run a marathon on day one.
The gym analogy is perfect here. You need to apply the principle of progressive overload.
Meaning, don't start with a 2-hour lecture on quantum physics.
Please don't. Start with 15 minutes. If you can focus well for 15 solid minutes, that is your baseline. That's a win. Then next week, try for 20 or 25.
You're training your brain just like you'd train a muscle.
You are physically changing your brain's capacity for sustained focus. It's a real, tangible thing.
And what about this multi-listening approach? This seems like a lot of work, but maybe effective for the really hard stuff.
It's for high-value content, things you absolutely have to master. The idea is you listen 3 times.
3 times.
Pass 1 is just for general understanding. Get the gist. Don't stop. Don't take notes. Just listen. Pass 2 is the deep dive. That's when you pause, take your Cornell notes, look up words. And then pass 3 is just relaxed, ambient listening while you're maybe walking or cooking.
What does that third pass do?
It reinforces the neural pathways you built in pass 2. And the best part is it takes all the pressure off getting everything the first time.
Which reduces anxiety.
And anxiety is the enemy of learning.
Okay, let's troubleshoot some specific issues.
Yeah.
What if the content is just boring, dry as toast, a topic you have to learn but have zero interest in?
We have all been there. The guide says, find the relevance. You have to challenge yourself. Find 3 ways this dry tax code or whatever it is applies to your life or your goals. Gamify it.
So make it a treasure hunt.
Or reframe it. Treat it as skill practice. Say to yourself, okay, I don't care about this topic, but I am using this 20 minutes to train my focus muscle. The content just becomes the dumbbell. It stops being about the boring tax law and starts being about improving your mental discipline.
That is a fantastic reframe. What about difficult accents? That can be a huge barrier and really fatiguing.
Exposure therapy. It sounds counterintuitive, but the solution is to seek out more of that accent.
Really, not avoid it.
Your brain is a pattern recognition machine. It will adjust, but it needs data. It needs practice. Avoiding the accent just keeps it difficult forever. Listening to it, even for short bursts, makes it easier over time.
So lean into the discomfort.
Yeah.
And finally, restlessness. I'm a fidgeter. I can't just sit still for an hour.
Then don't. The answer is productive fidgeting, doodling, using a fidget toy. For non-technical content where you don't need to take notes, even walking can be great.
How does that help?
For kinesthetic learners, moving the body actually helps lock the mind in place. It occupies that restless part of the brain that wants to run away, which frees up the rest of your brain to focus on the audio.
We have covered a massive amount of ground here. I mean, from chilling your room to 65 degrees to drawing Cornell notes to listening to brown noise. But As we wrap up, I think the most important thing is the mindset shift.
Absolutely. The good enough mindset.
Yeah, the guide really emphasizes this. You do not need to catch 100% of the words. It's not possible, and it's not the goal.
Letting go of that perfectionism reduces anxiety. And as we said, anxiety is the enemy of focus. If you miss a word, just let it go. Flow is so much more important than precision in the moment.
Because if you stop to worry about the word you just missed, you're guaranteed to miss the next 3 sentences.
Exactly.
And I really love the detective mindset idea as a final frame.
Yes. You need to shift from being a student, passive, worried about a test, to being a detective.
An investigator.
You're constantly looking for clues, solving the mystery of the content. Where is this argument going? What's the evidence for that claim? Does this contradict what they said 10 minutes ago? It makes it an active pursuit.
So here's our challenge to you, the listener. Do not try to do all of these things tomorrow. You will absolutely explode.
Please don't. Just pick one. Just one thing. Maybe it's the 3-minute preview. Maybe it's a 20-minute timer. Maybe it is just putting your phone in another room.
Try it for 2 weeks. See if it changes your experience. And here is a final thought for you to chew on. We often think of focus as pure willpower, gritting your teeth and just forcing it. But what if focus isn't about willpower at all? What if it's actually just a byproduct of conversation?
That's a great way to put it, because if you aren't talking back to the audio, at least in your own head, are you really listening?
Think about that next time you hit play. Thanks for diving in with us.
Happy listening.